All right, everybody, welcome to the January 19th, 2012 meeting of the Edina Transportation Commission. The first order is roll call.
Here.
Commissioner Bongo.
Here.
Commissioner Brady.
Here.
Commissioner Franzen.
Here.
Commissioner Janovi.
Here.
Commissioner McLeveen. Commissioner Nelson.
Here.
Commissioner Schreiger. Commissioner Scholl Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. The next thing is the approval of the meeting agenda. We have a revised agenda in front of you. Would anybody like to move the agenda? So moved. Okay, it's been moved, seconded?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Next is the approval of minutes. Let's start with December 15th, 2011. Were there any comments on the minutes? No? I did have a couple of comments. I did, reading through them, I don't think it's anything that requires a change, but the bulleted discussion list on page 2, because the comments are not attributed and they seem to ping pong a little bit, like one comment will be made and then something slightly opposite that is said. I can see how down the line as a public record this could be confusing to people, and if people are comfortable with that, we can of course go ahead and approve, but I wanted to point that out. See if anybody else had that same feeling.
I was not in attendance to the meeting, so reading through it I was trying to understand who was making the point. That was a little difficult.
I think, Catherine?
So I think that's a telling comment for anybody, since the minutes are sort of the purposes for anybody who's not in attendance at the meeting. So I guess I'd prefer that we try to avoid the bulleted comments and instead attribute and provide a little more context as is present in the rest of the minutes.
Okay. And so going forward, should we have that comment reflected in tonight's minutes so that somebody understands that we did comment about these minutes?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
For the sake of the minute taker, are you wanting each individual identified, or do you want the committee versus, you want just each person making a comment identified?
I realize that's not always possible, especially when going off a tape recording. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes just a narrative that puts the opposing comments in a context is helpful, but the name of the person doesn't always have to be listed.
Okay.
In my sense. I don't know. Tom?
I think that the bullet points are okay if you first have a conclusion and then have the bullet points that support that conclusion listed. And maybe there's three conclusions that are possible.
Thanks. There was one question I had at the bottom of the page. After discussion, the recommendation was to support the Richmond Hills Park Neighborhood Street reconstruction as submitted, and then here, with showing the intersection modification at Kent and Windsor and Warwick and Kent. And I wasn't sure what that meant.
If you remember the drawing had made modifications to the curb lines at those intersections. That was that green, dark green color on the exhibit. But perhaps the exhibit could go with this, by the way.
That was part of the plan as shown, so as submitted, so it didn't need to be broken out, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, or maybe delete either with or showing. Was there anything else? Okay. Does anybody want to move?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, it's been moved, seconded?
I'll second.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that carries. Our next minutes are our special meeting of January 9th. Did anybody have any comments about those?
I just had one comment, and it was on the third page, where it talked about at the meeting, we discussed the assessment amount of the sidewalks. It was discussed it was between $600 and $800 per home. And then, I don't know if this is well enough noted in there, but in the parentheses, where that cost went up to $1,700, that was not mentioned at the meeting. That was added by staff later, so.
That's actually a great point, and it's a question I maybe somebody up here can answer, or Jack, Wayne, or Sharon, maybe you can answer. When the minutes are supposed to be a record of what happened at that meeting, when something is learned after the meeting, should it appear in the minutes? I'm seeing a no, and that's my understanding too. So would people want to recommend deleting the sentence in parentheses?
Or at least a note that suggests that was added after
Okay.
the meeting. It was not discussed at the meeting, I think would be appropriate.
Made a separate paragraph, I think should be a space made, and then that would be inserted with an asterisk on it.
What do you think is the best way to proceed?
I think at times it can be helpful when the staff looks up and finds an answer, and to put it in context. So if we just accept it, it's okay, but it should be identified that it came after.
Are you comfortable with that? Okay, so the recommendation is to approve the minutes as they are with clearer notation that the information in parentheses was not presented at the meeting, but was a clarification provided after?
Right.
Okay. Have we moved approval?
I move.
Okay.
I move.
Now we have a second? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, that carries. Traffic safety report. Any comments, questions?
Again, Chair, I have one question on that. Section B talks about the request for a redesign of the Hennepin County Public Library parking lot. I guess in reading this, I'm assuming that's the Edina one over by Grandview, but I guess just a clarification whether that was the Southdale Library or the Edina Library. As I assume it was, again, in reading it, I'm assuming it was the Grandview, but it doesn't really,
So specified.
yeah. They're both Hennepin County libraries.
Right.
And it talks about Hennepin County Library, so.
Yeah, that one, was the person referred to planning?
Yeah, what we'll actually do is that it is referring to the one over by Grandview Square. I think we can make a revisement to the Traffic Safety Committee report, noting that with a proper address in there to show where that is located. And staff did recommend that the individual who is questioning this get in contact with the planning department to better understand the Grandview small area study, knowing that there's been some thought put into what that may look like, or some at least concepts of what that may look like in the future. And that'd be probably the best location for that individual to pursue.
Okay. Is that,
No other questions for me?
also in section B, the removal of the stop ahead sign, did anybody see City Manager Scott Neal's blog? Did you guys see it? You didn't see it?
I didn't.
Oh, it was a blog about not liking these stop ahead warning signs. And then after I read the blog, I looked up in the MUTCD and to learn about them, because I had never thought much about them before. But I guess I have a question. The way this is written up, the requester would like the sign removed because the vegetation is overgrown. The solution is to remove the vegetation. Is that handling the request? Is the person now okay with that sign? Do you know what I'm asking? And is that sign needed?
From a staff perspective, this was looked at, and yes, the conclusion we came to, there's one tree in this location that has a lower hanging branch. City ordinance does not allow some of these lower hanging branches to be out over the roadway. That's what's obscuring the sign. And so staff believes that sign was put there and is in there in earnest and should remain. And the best procedure here would be remove that vegetation. It's very typical for our Public Works Department and Sign Maintenance Department to do tree trimming around the community where some of these signs are in more vegetated locations.
Good. In section C, it's a discussion for another time, but the person who wanted a reduced speed limit on 51st, and I'm thinking, is that the Halifax and 51st behind Lunds? Is that what it's referring to? Okay. I just wanted to clarify, because I actually had to look that one up on a map to understand it. All right, anything else? Okay, so would anybody like to move that the Traffic Safety Committee report be forwarded to the City Council with our comments? So move. Okay. Second?
Second.
All in, or further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, great, thanks. Now we have a community comment part of our meeting, and anybody who would like to address the commission is welcome to on a transportation matter. You can come up and talk for up to 3 minutes. Don't jump up all at once. We have a room full of students, so welcome. I'm glad that you're here, and I hope you find this interesting. And the next thing should be pretty interesting. We have a presentation on the 494 Xerxes Avenue Bridge. And Jack, you're going to introduce our guests? All right, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Commission members, yes, the first item before us this evening will be a discussion on the 494 overpass bridge at Xerxes or York Avenue down in the very southeast part of our community. With me tonight from MnDOT, there's actually two individuals here, but Scott Pedersen, West Area Engineer, will be presenting an update for this. If you remember right, about a year ago now, we brought this in front of you before. It was the earlier stages. Tonight, we're going to dive into it a little bit deeper, a little more finalized plans. Ultimately, what MnDOT will be looking for from our community, from our City Council, is a agreement with the City Council for municipal consent for this. And so the first step for that would be to move that forward to the Transportation Commission, get any input, comments, or recommendations that we could then forward onto our council to help educate in their decision-making process for this. I'll turn it over to Scott at this time to go through his presentation, and he'll be able to answer any questions you have at the end.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commission members. It's actually 3 projects that we're developing on 494, and the general premise behind the 3 projects is, one, it resurfaced 494 from approximately Truck Highway 100 to 24th Avenue. There's a section there where it switches from the concrete to the bituminous. And we'll construct 2 auxiliary lanes on westbound 494. The first auxiliary lane will be between the Portland Avenue entrance ramp and the Nicollet Avenue exit ramp. And the second auxiliary lane would be start with the northbound, the westbound loop to go westbound from 35W to westbound 494, go through Penn Avenue, under Xerxes, through France, and tie into the existing auxiliary lane that currently starts with the southbound France to westbound 494, and also the reconstruction of the Xerxes Avenue Bridge. The project's currently scheduled for a let-in on June 8th, 2012. Construction will start in August of 2012. Phase 1 will be completed in the fall of 2012, and Phase 2 and 3 will be completed next summer. And I'll go through each individual phase, so, and with completion in the fall of 2013. Phase 1 construction is scheduled to start in August of 2012 to late fall of 2012, and the construction will include the construction of the 2 proposed auxiliary lanes, reconstruction of the outside shoulders to thicken those shoulders, and reconstruction of the inside shoulders from 24th Avenue to Truck Highway 77, and the resurfacing of 494 from 24th Avenue to Truck Highway 77. So the premise is we want to get the outside shoulders constructed so we can move traffic out there in the next year. We'll maintain 3 lanes of traffic throughout the duration of the construction. It will require ramp closures at 77, 12th, Portland, Nicollet, 35W, Penn, and France Avenue, and those ramp closures will be limited to a minimum amount of days duration, and they won't be all shut at the same time. We won't have 2 successive ramps closed at the same time, so we'll for example, have the exit ramp to Penn closed, but we won't close the exit ramp to France, so France could be used to mitigate the closure of Penn and then flip-flop. The mill and overlay on 494 from 24th to Truck Highway 77 will be completed with overnight lane closures. Phase 2 construction will begin in the spring of 2013 and continue until summer 2013. And that work will consist of the reconstruction of the inside median of 494 from Truck Highway 77 to approximately Truck Highway 100, currently with the section that has dual plate beam guardrail and the 4-foot wide curb and gutter median will be removed and replaced with one single high glare screen barrier similar to what's on either side of the project, and along with upgrading the drainage system in the median of 494. 3 lanes of traffic will be maintained for that portion of the project. Traffic will be moved to the outside shoulders that were previously constructed in the fall of the previous year, and the 2 auxiliary lanes, and will work in the middle of 494. And the intent is to maintain all the ramps open, but if there's a safety issue that arises as a result of the ramps being closed, we'll have to consider the safety aspects and close ramps, and we'll surely coordinate with the cities with respect to any potential ramp closures. And the phase 3 would be the resurfacing of 494 from Truck Highway 100 to Truck Highway 77, and we'll accomplish that in 4 weekend closures, 1 per direction in 2 basic sections, from Truck Highway 100 to 35W, and then from 35W to Truck Highway 77, so 1 per direction. So the detour, for example, when we 100 to 35W would be 100 to 62 to 35W, and the next section would be 35W 62 to 77. The Xerxes Avenue Bridge is scheduled to start in fall of 2012. I think I heard today we're figured on November. We'll close the bridge to traffic, drop the bridge, work on the bridge over the winter. The intent is to maintain the 2 intersections at West 78th Street, Edinburgh Way on the north side, and Southtown Boulevard on the south side until such time the bridge is constructed, and we'd have to reconstruct the approaches to the bridge. One of the primary goals of the project is to raise the profile of the bridge or increase the vertical clearance over 494. That bridge has been struck several times, one time requiring major repair on the bridge. So the intent is to increase the vertical clearance over 494. So the detour for the Xerxes Avenue Bridge closure would be via the use of France, 77th, Penn, and American Boulevard. In anticipation, the bridge would be completed in the spring of, or late spring, summer of 2013. It should be 13. There's 3 issues that, one of the last issue was brought up at an open house that we had, I believe, was it earlier this year, or last year. 3 issues that have come up: the proposed typical underneath the Xerxes Avenue Bridge. I-494 is a managed facility, and access to Xerxes Avenue from Interstate 494. The typical section on the bridge, that 2001 FEIS identified reconstruction of the Xerxes Bridge to facilitate 6 lanes of capacity in each direction, along with reserving the 26 feet for future transportation use, and that future transportation use wasn't identified in that document. It could be light rail, BRT. It just identified as future transportation use. When we looked at the replacement of the bridge and looked at the EIS concept, the bridge would have, the center pier would be relocated, and it would have ended up in the right shoulder of the eastbound lanes of 494 currently. And then the south abutment would push south. It would require the acquisition of right-of-way at Southtown Boulevard, reconstruction of Southtown Boulevard, retaining walls and such. And so we felt that we could develop a project that would construct the Xerxes Bridge as it's currently shown, and it would provide for 6 lanes of capacity in each direction, but it won't provide for that 26 foot of future transportation use. MnDOT's 20-year plan and the Council's transportation policy plan does not address any expansion of 494 for the next 20 years. So we're assuming that the risk, we're willing to accept that risk and not providing that EIS layout. Construct the bridge. It provides for flexibility for expansion on 494, but it doesn't provide for the 26 feet. And the risk would be that if we ever did receive funding that would allow us to reconstruct 494, the 35W interchange and the 100 interchange, that we would go back and reconstruct that bridge to be consistent with the FEIS layout at that time. So, and there is an upcoming study that will look at there's been a lot of question regarding that 26 feet, whether we should be reserving that in the future. And I think between the cities along the corridor, we need to sit down, and the Met Council and MnDOT and all the other partnering agencies need to sit down and revisit that vision and see if that's a viable vision. And there's a study, the upcoming study, to further develop the 494 35W study, and that would be an opportunity for that to look at that issue. I-494 is a managed corridor. MnDOT's 20-year plan and the Met Council's transportation policy plan identify Interstate 494 as a Tier 2 managed corridor. State law currently prohibits the conversion of general purpose lanes to a managed facility. Our intent with this project would be to install additional capacity on 494 for between 35W and Truck Highway 100 as a general purpose lane at this time. And we would like to include language in the resolution that we're going to ask from the City of Edina that would address reserving that capacity for the future conversion to a managed facility. So at the time when that would make sense for the 494 corridor as a whole, but that capacity that we're adding now was reserved for that, so that would address the conversion from general purpose to a managed lane. And I just provided, this is language that we included as part of a resolution for a project on 35W north of 4th Street. I'm sure you've heard this in the papers, but it just, whereas the city believes implementation of managed corridor would only be considered at such time when the analysis confirms that that managed link and cost benefits are positive. Managed strategy for the interstate corridor should consist of a segment of roadway that provides a long logical starting point and a logical terminus. And be it resolved, the city supports the construction of a proposed auxiliary lane on Interstate 4 and the reservation of capacity for the conversion to a managed facility. And the last issue, one issue that was brought up at one of the open houses is access to Xerxes from 494. Currently, the spacing between Penn Avenue and Xerxes Avenue is a half a mile, and from Xerxes to France is approximately 1.5 miles. The Astro Green Book says that freeways where interchanges are most common, the operational efficiency of the interchange tends to govern the entire freeway and therefore represents the greatest hindrance to the efficient flow of traffic, which is the functional purpose of the freeway. Astro just states that the interchange spacing should be determined by weaving volumes, ability to assign those movements, progression, the length, and speed changes, speed change lanes. It also defines a general rule of thumb for spacing of interchanges on the interstate or on urban facilities of 1 interchange per mile. MnDOT's road design manual identifies the same one interchange per mile, but it also says the use of collector, the interchange spacing could be reduced, but it recommends the use of collector distributor roadways. The bridge that we're proposing now would not prohibit the addition of access at Xerxes in the future. Right now, we feel that it's beyond the scope of this project to replace the existing bridge, and I'd open it up for any questions that you may have. Well,
Does anybody have a question to start with? Tom?
I've got 4 questions, so I'll be willing to repeat them if you want to answer them one at a time. One is the clearance that is required for an LRT. It's not like a regular railroad where there's 23 feet required. What kind of clearance do you have to have for an LRT?
Standard railroad is about 23 feet is the clearance. I'm trying to think, when we developed Hiawatha, I think the clearance on the main track was approximately 19 feet is what we were shooting for. And I think it was 17.5 feet for the maintenance facility yards.
So is this bridge going to have to be considerably higher than the current bridge?
It would if LRT was an alternative to be considered in the future. Penn Avenue and Lyndale Avenue weren't constructed to that elevation.
That decision's not made yet?
That decision has not been made for the 494 corridor. And the Met Council's plan and MnDOT's plan does not identify light rail on 494 itself. It identifies a lot of other corridors.
Let's hope that if light rail comes along, and it probably will, that they'll design the rail itself differently so that the the bridge that we're going to build here is going to be adequate and not have to be rebuilt again.
Yep.
Okay,
Agreed.
next question is, I'm the one that raised the access to Xerxes, and I'm still disappointed that we can't get a westbound 494 to Xerxes, only that, so that trucks and other vehicles that want to go north on Xerxes to serve the greater Southdale area could have an alternative route to France. I think it could be done if, for example, the frontage road, the north frontage road that goes to Xerxes on this diagram that's in front of us, were to be cut off, and that those people that live on the north frontage road would go back to Vincent to go north and go back up to make a connection further north. The other thought was, if that bridge, the north side of that bridge was enlarged, not as big as the one at Penn with the, I forget what the name of that design is that does the
single point urban interchange.
center point?
Single point.
Single point, okay. Single point. If that kind of concept was used just for that one access point. Thirdly, the grading is already done. It's all there. It's perfect. Anyway, I don't expect you to answer further other than your comment about it could be done possibly in the future. And yes, I understand the spacing requirements. I guess that's all I've got, is there's 4 points in there that I wanted to have.
Right. And the concern with the access, in the collector-distributor portion of that is, you can see, I believe, the distance between Lyndale and Nicollet and Portland 12 is approximately 1/2 mile.
Right.
Now, and those ramps are short, they're steep. One of the reasons why we're installing that auxiliary lane on westbound between Portland and Nicollet is because we received a complaint because people are coming down that ramp and it's so steep they don't have a lot of time to look over their shoulder to see traffic oncoming, so they can't find a gap. And the thought would be, it's not a very long auxiliary lane, but at least it provides them the opportunity to get down on the corridor parallel to that through movement and find a gap, and it should be a safer situation for those people entering, also the people exiting to Nicollet. So, I mean, that's the concern. And I think one of the goals is to reduce access to increase the efficiency of 494, or maintain what little efficiency we have currently. And the congestion on 494, I believe, is 4 to 6 hours daily, and it's not a directional thing, it's both directions. So,
my only last comment to everything is that Edina is extremely interested in the success of the overall Southdale area. And there's a lot of square feet that has to be served, way more than just about anywhere except the Mall of America. And significant improvements were made by MnDOT and the owners of the Mall of America to the highway in that vicinity, especially having to do with Cedar. And secondly, we would like to make sure that our overall transportation system is a success. And for a long time, we've viewed the transportation from Bloomington on Xerxes York all the way up to the crosstown as being a significant improvement to our overall transportation system. That's all I've got.
I just had a question regarding if you know how many instances there are on the 694, 494 loop where there are exits less than a half mile currently.
I believe the entrance and exits between Lindale, Nicollet and Portland and 12th and 77 are all approximately 1/2 mile, and the interchanges south on 35, 82nd, 90th, 94th, 98th, those are all approximately 1/2 mile apart. I mean, all those ramps are, and actually we're looking to replace the 94th Street bridge now, and one of the things that we're looking at working with the city of Bloomington is looking at, can we reduce some of that access, maybe split diamond type of things where you eliminate the access to 35 over the north side at 94th and the south side at 90th Street to try to reduce some of that spacing and help better manage the traffic.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for the people who are watching this on the screen. Could you show us on the map what portion of this project is actually within Edina, and also maybe explain the process of municipal consent so people understand that?
Sure. Is that over here? So you still hold a hand. Edina's actually, you can see the line that goes north and south here on, I believe that's Xerxes. And you can see the dash line on the south side along the south side of Edinburgh Way here. Oh no, I lost my. And actually, this is Edinburgh Way over here, and you can see it's Edina to the north of that. And actually, the line goes north on Edinburgh Way as it turns to the north, and then turns west again, just north. So it's only about approximately 1/4 mile along 494 from Xerxes to the west, and then it comes up. So the northwest corner of the Xerxes Avenue Bridge is Edina.
What is the process of municipal consent, and what do you need from Edina? Is it required, or is it preferred?
There's 3 criteria that we need to ask the city for municipal consent. One is the acquisition of right-of-way, which we're not doing with this project. 2 would be the modification of access, which we're not doing with this project. We're maintaining all the current access that there is on 494. And the 3rd criteria is the additional capacity to the facility, which we are doing with the auxiliary lane from northbound 35W that goes west to Truck Highway 100. So that is the reason why we're asking for municipal consent. And it's just good practice to work with your local partners. So the process would be is we're meeting here tonight. I believe we need to schedule a public hearing to take comment from the public. And then once that is complete, follow up with either this committee and then go to council.
And so the one issue is the additional capacity on the highway.
Right.
Okay. So nothing about the bridge itself, except that the bridge will make it possible to add the extra
Right. The
lane.
bridge will, and I should probably more importantly to the city of Edina is actually the typical section on the bridge. You know, we're lengthening the bridge to facilitate capacity on 494, but the bridge is also being widened to maintain the current 4 lanes of traffic that are on Xerxes Avenue, but it's also at widening the bridge to facilitate left turn lanes, which are currently on the north side and south side of the intersections. And so it's just carrying that cross section too. It's providing for 6-foot shoulders northbound and southbound, and we're actually providing 10-foot sidewalks on either side of the bridge. So the sidewalks for the pedestrians and the 6-foot shoulders can be utilized for one-way bicycle facilities. And I know that Xerxes/York is identified as a bike route, so this should actually improve that existing condition dramatically for the local system.
That's what I remember from our last conversation about it. Catherine?
So is it your intention to when the project is complete, that the lanes, the shoulders would be striped as bike lanes?
They would be striped, and it was one of the questions that we had heard from a member of the Hennepin County Bicycle Advisory, whether they'd be striped as bike lanes, but right now there's not bike lanes on either approach to the bridge.
Okay.
So I think we'd wait until such time that there was a bike lane that approached each side, and then we would look at marking the bridge. I mean, to mark just the bridge. I don't know.
So what's the current width of the bridge, and what's the new width of the bridge?
I don't know those numbers off the top. I believe the new bridge is approximately 115 feet wide, and then the existing bridge is probably, it's 10, I honestly would guess, but 60 feet. So it's quite a bit wider. It's almost,
Right.
I'd say doubling.
The only reason I ask is obviously it makes the access up and down north and south on Xerxes, or on York, excuse me, much easier, but also it makes that crossing east-west, where there's a park in that building at Edinburgh Park, and I would imagine several of the residents from Richfield use that as well. But it makes that quite a bit wider for walking across that street, I would think.
And as part of the project, we will be upgrading all the ADA at the intersection of the corners. So we're reconstructing the corners, so we'll upgrade all the ADA to meet the current standards for the ADA, which would include the north side. You know, you're right, there's a lot more distance to cross. But on the north side, I believe, say at the north side of Edinburgh, I believe that width already exists today. It's just the south side doesn't,
Okay.
where the bridge is, because that section's not as wide.
Okay, are there more questions, Michael?
What is the intersection control? Is it a signal or is it just stop signs?
The intersection control is four-way stop at both intersections on the north and the south, and they're both intersections are city controlled, so the cities would determine what the proper intersection control. And we have not received any recommendations as far as a desire to change it from all-way stop to signal. So.
Okay, I wonder if we could hear from Jack, and you could let us know what you need from us tonight.
Well, as we mentioned, the City Council will be reviewing this and anticipating right now that it'd be granting municipal consent with the charge of the Transportation Commission to be reviewing not only local but regional traffic improvements that affect our community. The thought here tonight was that it'd be nice to kind of get the first touchdown point for our community to understand if this is something we're in favor of, if there's any concerns that we have. Some of the questions that were discussed tonight will all be part of the minutes. But I think additionally, I would ask your group whether you feel formalizing something in advisory communication to the council is appropriate, or whether just you would like to prefer that your meeting minutes and the questions and the answers to those questions kind of carry the voice for you. So I'll leave that up to you. But knowing that the Transportation Commission would be the first stop off on this process, we certainly felt that you should have an opportunity to comment and direct it as you see appropriate.
When will the council be asked to take some kind of action on this?
And at this point, I think we're talking kind of the April timeframe, and that's still, MnDOT's still working out those details. But that's about when we're anticipating that to be.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, can I ask Scott a question? When you covered the schedule, you covered that you're scheduling a public hearing that MnDOT hosts?
We would, as part of the consent process, we'd ask the city to schedule a public hearing if that's what they want,
Okay.
hear input from the residents. I think that's to provide that opportunity for public hearing. Now, every community does it different. I've seen Minneapolis handles the public hearing at their Transportation Commission and policy, and every city does it different. Some do it at the council, some do it at the transportation committees. I don't know what Edina's process is, so, as far as public hearings.
I was trying to think of what we did on the 169, 494 interchange. I don't recall that we hosted a public hearing on the municipal consent for that. I think it was shown to the ETC, I think, and then it went to the council for the municipal consent. 'Cause I know that was a pretty fast-paced municipal consent that went through. And this one, too, I want to get you on record that there's no Edina costs, local costs at this point on this.
There is only one issue that would require local participation, and was if pedestrian level lighting was requested on the bridge itself. And being, well, there's 3 cities, Richfield maintains the bridges in 2 cities, Edina and Bloomington, but and Bloomington's asked for a study regarding the lighting. There's currently existing tower lighting on the corridor, and they want to know how much light those lights currently shed on the bridge, determine whether pedestrian level lighting would be necessary if the lighting that's on 494 provides enough. So I think we've provided some numbers regarding that. I haven't heard any response as far as the request. That would be the only item that we would request cost participation for. So if there is no pedestrian level lighting, we wouldn't.
What I'd recommend is that we've taken down your comments on it, and that we put those in the minutes, and then that this comes back to this group to as a once we figure out where this public hearing is going to be hosted. This is the first I've heard about a public hearing, so I think we need to look at if the city council is going to host it, or if MnDOT or whomever is going to host it, to get public comment, and then have that public comment come back to this group to give a final recommendation to the city council for the municipal consent. And I think we can do that in the time frame, in the next February to March time frame, to get it to the city council for an April municipal consent, if that's what I'm hearing tonight.
And it would be a public hearing, would be on the one issue of added capacity, and not on, and maybe on the street lighting, but it would not be a whole opportunity to redesign,
That's what we would hope, but a public
Right.
hearing, as you know, people can speak publicly
Of
on
course.
things.
They
So
can
that's what we would
tonight.
hope, that we would try to direct people to comment on, yeah.
And
Yes. I was wondering, will Bloomington be having its own municipal consent approval of this too?
Each city, Richfield, Bloomington, and Edina.
Does it ever make sense to have kind of a joint meeting of the 3 communities?
I think each city has their own process. I don't know that I've ever seen 3 cities go through. I mean, Bloomington used to have a transportation commission or committee. They since not disbanded that committee. We're going directly to the council work session there, and then to council. Richfield, I went to their transportation commission and council work session, going back to the transportation commission. So each city, and each one's a little further along. This is the first interaction with Edina, other than the staff level.
I'm just curious, and I don't have the maps in my head, but does this tie into the future bike lanes or bike paths? When we talk about lighting, and, because these lights don't get replaced every year, do we want to be thinking about the bikes and pedestrians that we are targeting for this area at all?
I don't remember off the top of my head. Do you guys have a way of pulling up the bike route figure, or do you know off the top of your head if Xerxes is identified as a primary? Okay. But right, that is something to consider. But kind of what I'm thinking is, because the idea of a public hearing is a new, it's news to our staff, that, and we don't want to take, I'm just speaking personally, I don't think we want to take more of your time than is necessary on this. So I'm thinking, hand this back over to Wayne, and you'll think about what the process should be, who it should come to next, if it needs to come back to us, or if it can can go directly to the council. Yeah, I see you guys.
Yep, I'll definitely do that. As far as the lighting goes, we want to see what the photometrics are on the bridge, because just with the light towers, it might be enough light, which I'm thinking it is, that would suffice for the pedestrians and the cyclists. So we want to get that information from MnDOT, which they've promised to us to take a look at that. To me, it always makes sense to not overlight and use too much power if the light towers are sufficient.
To Commissioner Skull Davis's question, the cover sheet does say the last paragraph that the Xerxes Avenue Bridge is identified as a bike route on the county's bicycle transportation plan, the Edina Comprehensive Bicycle Transportation Plan, and the Bloomington Alternative Transportation Plan. So it's identified as a key corridor, it looks like, for bikes. And going back to Commissioner Nelson's comment about the width on the northern side of the intersection, I'm just wondering, do you know right now, is there a median island on the northern side of that intersection to provide a refuge for pedestrians? And could that be a potential addition as you're going to be redoing that intersection already?
There's a narrow median on the north side now of Edinburgh Way, and we're proposing the construction of a median on the south side, but I believe that median is 6 feet. So there's not a lot of refuge there.
Mm-hmm.
So
And that raises a question. If this group and then the council wanted, how would this group propose that median be expanded to create a refuge?
we matched what was on either side of the road. I don't know. I mean, there's certain treatments we can look at. This plan has been further developed. I think we're actually planning on sending what we're calling a 90% plan to each of the 3 cities for review with that June 8th letter. And our plan turn-in is about March 1st, so we're kind of pushing up against the turn-in. So I mean, we're well along in the design. I can surely provide those details to the city staff, which can disseminate that.
What I recommend is that we take a look at their design plan and incorporate a refuge and possibly even a Durprint crosswalk in there that we're applying elsewhere, and the county has done that elsewhere also, so that we get a good pedestrian mode. As you know, the next item on the agenda is talking about pedestrian crossings on France, and from once we accomplish that, then we're moving over to York, and so this would probably be the southerly end start of good pedestrian crossings. So.
Okay, so that would definitely come back to us, because that would be something we'd be interested in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that would also possibly a cost to the city, but it's pretty minimal.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Tom?
I was simply going to say that I don't think that most of this would have to come back to the ATC except for any changes that would take place between now and after a public hearing, with those changes being considered by this group and perhaps a vote taken as to our opinion on it, and that would be passed forward to the council for final approval.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? All right, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commission members.
All right. Our next item is the France Avenue pedestrian bridge rescoping application.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. We will next be moving on to the France Avenue Bridge project. And with me tonight is Chuck Rickert from WSB. He'll be giving a more in-depth overview and kind of a status update as to where we are, giving a schedule and a few additional items. But I will set the table by stating that this is an area that the city currently has an accepted or approved funding source of $1 million for a PED bridge over France Avenue at 72nd Street. And through the council and the TC process in the last few months, you both governmental agencies here have asked us to take a step back and look at transferring that from a vertical grade-separated overpass, and to try to see if we can find ways to reapply for these same funds for at-grade intersection improvements for pedestrian and bicycle improvements, enhancements to the corridor. And so with that, I'll let Chuck go into more detail about what they're proposing as their revised scope and application process.
Thanks, Jack. Madam Chair, members of the Commission, my name is Chuck Rickard. I'm with WSB and Associates. We were retained by the city to look at this scope change and sunset date extension for this project. There we go. As most of you know, as Jack indicated, right now the city has $1 million in federal transportation enhancement funding for an overpass in the area around 72nd Street that's shown on red in this project location map. One of the things, as he indicated, the council and the ETC wants to look at is expanding that to look at more of the corridor along France Avenue from Minnesota all the way up to 66th in that area. A little bit of history. Again, the city received or applied for that funding source back in 2007. They were selected in 2008 for that money. The city then put that project in their CIP for the year 2011. And as Jack indicated, over the past several months, there's been some concerns with the overpass versus at-grade intersection. And in conjunction with that, back in 2009, Hennepin County, in conjunction with the city of Edina, did a study that looked at the corridor along France Avenue and looked at some of the improvements that pedestrians and bicycles could do along the corridor. So that came into play also in this discussion. As we indicated before, this is what you see on the screen here is what the approved proposal is with the Met Council, and for the federal funds right now, it's the construction of a pedestrian and bicycle bridge over France Avenue in the vicinity of 72nd Street to provide a safe, efficient connection between the commercial and retail and on the east side and the residential on the west side. It further explains that there's about 600 feet of pedestrian bituminous trail, and then it also included lighting, landscaping, benches, and signing. So that's the actual description that's in the grant right now. So that's what we have to work for. There's two things that we're going for here. First is a sunset date extension. Right now, the funds that the city has will expire if they don't have certain things met on March 31st of this year. So we have to request that sunset date extension. Go through some of the requirements on that. The second is the scope change. And the description that you just saw up there, we have to justify a alternative scope, and there's certain requirements that we have to go through for that. So there's two components of this that we're going to be requesting through the Met Council, through MnDOT and the Met Council through this process. First, I'll talk about sunset date extension, because if we don't get that, the scope change doesn't matter. So we need to get the sunset date extension. That's the most critical piece of this. Once we have that, then we need to do them both at the same time. But if they don't grant that sunset date extension, then it doesn't matter what the project is. The funds will run out here at the end of March. With the sunset date extension, you can extend it for 1 year. So you have to have all your project requirements done within a year from March. So it'd be March 31st of 2013 would be the new sunset date of that funding. The requirements for that, you have to have your environmental documents completed and approved. You have to have right-of-way. If there's any right-of-way acquisition, you have to have that approved. Or if you go through the any condemnation process, that has to be initiated. You don't have to have actually it done, but if you would go through that process, you have to have that at least initiated. MnDOT has to have approved the plans. You don't have to have the project bid or under construction, but you have to have that approval, and that you can set that letting date within 90 days of that sunset date of the project. So those are the requirements to extend that. that you have to meet to meet that sunset date. The requirements, there's really three areas that we're looking at for meeting the sunset date request requirements. First is you need to process you have to show progress has been made on the project. So we need to identify what's been done, and how much we've done on the project to date. We have to document any unique reasons why, we're asking for this extension, and document that the project can be completed within that year. And then finally, the process that we need to go through is MnDOT will submit the project to MnDOT first. They will review and approve it, or recommend approval. We'll then take that to the Met Council, TAC Committee, Transportation Advisory Commission, Funding and Programming Committee, part of TAC, and then they again will review and approve that, and then it'll move forward into the tab for ultimate approval. So some of those bullet points, progress it has been made on the project, things that we've done to date on this project, the adjacent property owners, especially around 72nd, have been, talked to. We have had some initial discussions with them, so the right-of-way discussions have been in process. Hennepin County, the city, and have completed that France Avenue corridor study, so that, is again another piece that we're, talking that has been accomplished since that time too. Some of the unique reasons, again, why we're requesting this change is, again, some of the ear bodies here, the council, ETC, and the Bike Edina Task Force, has reviewed this proposal and has some concerns with the overpass versus at-grade intersections. That's the second point there. Since the time we did this original proposal, there's been a little bit more emphasis on complete streets, having more on-street stuff, providing for that. So, there's been kind of a change of philosophy, since 2007 to now. So, that's another reason that we did it. We're looking at it. And then the direction that ETC and Council has made in proceeding with that at-grade study of the area. And again, can the project be completed within this extended year time frame? And this kind of shows a schedule that we would anticipate to do that. The design plans for at-grade intersections is a lot less, cumbersome than a bridge, so those can be done quick, a lot more quicker. So we're looking at a spring of 2013 construction with this process that we're looking here. The scope change, again, this is the other element that we need to look at. The new elements of the project must be eligible for funding, which the elements that we're talking about are. They would be eligible. No additional funding. Right now, we're capped at $1 million. We can ask for, 1.2 million. So we're capped at $1 million. That we won't get any more than that. The requirements that we need to look at, are listed there, and I'll be going through each one of those. But those are the requirements that we need to submit as part of the scope change for this process. And again, very similar process as the sunset date. It has to go through MnDOT for their review, and then to the Funding and Programming Committee of TAC. The project description that we're proposing now, in lieu of the one that we originally had, is construction of a pedestrian and bicycle connections across France Avenue between Minnesota and 66th Street to provide, again, the same, ending, the safe, efficient connection between the commercial retail on the east side and the west side. So we're looking at, connections between, at these intersections in lieu of the overpass. Some of the enhancements that we're looking at these intersections, median refuge islands, what we just talked about a little bit as part of the Xerxes project, with pedestrian push buttons. So we'd add a push button out in that middle refuge island as part of that. APS pedestrian signals and countdown timers at the intersections. Those are the audible signals, that are required as part of ADA now. So we'll have to add those to the intersection with the countdown timers for the pedestrians to cross at those intersections, at those signalized intersections. Enhanced crosswalks using the Duratherm, that we've done on other projects. Enhance pedestrian corner treatments, making a wider area at the corners for pedestrians to be able to, congregate, and have a safer area at the corners, and different treatments at those corners where we have the different push buttons and so forth in landscape medians. So those are some of the elements that we're looking at or that we're proposing now. We can talk about other ones that we can maybe look at also, but those are the ones that we're proposing right now. There's about 6,000 feet of trail or sidewalk that we would propose with this up and down the corridor, connecting these different intersections, primarily on one side of the road, so we'll have to get connections on both sides. And then again, the trail lighting, landscaping, benches, and signing, similar to the previous description. This shows a typical intersection, and as you can see, this is actually Gallagher, the intersection at Gallagher. You can see some of the elements that we'll be looking at. We'd be widening the median, to provide a 10 to 12 foot median, for refuge there. The red on the end would be, kind of some enhanced areas there. At the corners, we haven't got the details obviously at this point, but at the corners we would be looking at those enhanced pedestrian refuges on the corners. The crosswalks across, France Avenue. The lanes are being narrowed, slightly, with this proposal, similar to what's in the Hennepin County study. And then the signal would have to be modified, in order to accommodate, the narrowing lanes, the wider medians, the APS and pedestrian accommodations and so forth. So there would be some signal modifications that would happen with these improvements also. Yeah. Yeah, we would look at, what protection around those center refuge islands that we would need to put. Again, we haven't got into all the details of those yet, but that would be a center refuge island that would be protected from vehicles, yes. The green, and then we'd have the landscaped island, it'd be a landscaped situation on either side of those. One of the big factors when we're looking at this and when we're proposing this to, the Funding and Program Committee and MnDOT is the pedestrian bridge at 72nd kind of limits, who would really use it. You can see in this graphic shows what'd I do? Oh, okay. There's not a. You can see, this large area residential and, some office down the south here. But, there's a large area. People who are up in this neighborhood, probably aren't going to come down to 72nd to come back to Southdale. They're not going to do that. So, the use of the bridge is going to be somewhat limited, to the area. Plus, going up and over, people tend not to want to go up and over. It's work going up a bridge and then down the other side. So, what this graphic is showing and what we're trying to relay with this to the Met Council is, there's a lot of areas that we can cross here, and if we can make those crossings safer and more enhanced across there, we can get more people across France Avenue in more locations. So that's really what we're trying to relay with this. You can see underlying here, the red shows the existing sidewalks, and green shows the existing trails, the promenade trails and so forth. And the yellow shows primarily the east-west primary bike routes that are shown in the city's comp plan. So there's a lot of information on this drawing, but it does kind of illustrate what we're trying to show to Met Council and MnDOT that the one location isn't probably going to be as good as splitting them up in these other locations. What we're looking from you tonight, is, are there other intersection improvements that we should look at? I've handed out a copy of a draft of what we have to submit to MnDOT. It's the extension agreement and the extension request and the scope change request. It hits all the points that we need to as far as the requirements. That's included. As part of that, we've identified in one of the appendixes some additional treatments that could be looked at. So there's some other treatments that we could talk about and look at those intersections. But these are the ones that we feel would be the most beneficial, through the corridor. The ones that we've proposed now. There's some other ones that we could look at. Pedestrian, active warning devices, things like that we could look at. More pavement markings, stuff like that. So if there's any other, intersection enhancements that we should look at, we'd like to get your input on that. And then locations, and that kind of leads into the cost a little bit. Right now, the total cost of the project that was identified in the plan was a little over $2 million, for the bridge and all the components to the bridge. The city got the maximum of $1 million in the funding. The other $1 million is the city's responsibility. So there's a little over $2 million in project costs there. What we're looking at, and we looked at 3 intersections, with these typical configurations, and what we ended up with doing the 3 intersections was about the same price, a little over $2 million for those 3 intersections along the corridor. The intersection improvements that we're talking about here, one of the things that we're going to have to do, once we touch an intersection, we have to bring it up to ADA. So all the ped ramps, all those will have to be upgraded. So all the curb and gutter, around those radiuses, we're going to have to be replaced. So there's a significant amount of intersection improvements that we would have to do as part of this. New curb and gutter around those medians, things like that. So there's significant intersection improvements. The signal systems, basically, we're going to be replacing most of the signal system out there, with this new plan. So we're looking at a couple $100,000 per intersection for the signals to replace or upgrade those signals. Then the rest of the items through there, some retaining walls that we'd have to look at, to make these connection, paths between the intersections and so forth. So again, so we're looking at 3 intersections with this cost. Once we get into more detail of, actual design of these intersections, we can refine that a little bit more, but these are kind of our estimates right now.
Just curious if that cost estimate included any of the right-of-way acquisition, because I know it'd be pretty expensive in this corridor.
Yeah, right-of-way wasn't included in the original estimate, or it's not included in this one either. So, no, right-of-way is not included.
And comments. I'm Ann Breen. I work at the Metro Council. I think we've met before. And I was actually at Funding and Programming Committee this afternoon, where they were looking at a number of scope changes. And I'll tell you, this isn't a slam dunk, because the presenters for the folks there that wanted deadlines extended to their projects were really, well, I wouldn't call it the Inquisition, but they had to come in there with some really strong reasons of why they hadn't made any progress, or not enough, that they needed just another year. And you can only get another year extension. Excuse me. So I think it's a little awkward, because we're not going in with just a request to extend the deadline, but also, thank you, totally different projects. So I'm not sure, if they'll look at this and say, well, we will or we will not give you the extension, and which may kind of be end of story, can't even present an alternative project. But I think it's really important to make the case that the proposal, and I'm very much in favor of doing something other than the pedestrian crossing, but kind of why the pedestrian crossing really doesn't meet the needs of this corridor, what we want to do, and that having 2 or 3 intersection improvements is going to be more bang for the buck. You're serving more people. The other thing is, we've just done the 70th Street improvement project, which is, just remarkable and would tie beautifully into the Southdale, and I think that should be emphasized maybe as a priority intersection for this. So I think it's just really critical to come down hard on why this is so much better than that PED bridge, because I truly think it is, and I would love to see these kinds of improvements happening. But I'm not quite sure how you're going to have to finesse that whole scope or the deadline extension, you know, essentially for a project that we no longer want. That's going to be awkward.
Yeah, and you'll see in I didn't go through all the details and explanations and stuff that we have in here. I kind of gave you the overview, but I do have a lot of that written out in this document, you know, that you were given tonight. What we're going to ask is that you review that and get any comments you have on this. I know it's going to be tough, you know, you can't do it tonight, obviously, but any comments you have on the text and so forth to us by, you know, middle of next week, if you can, by email or whatever, if you can get that to, you know, through Jack and Wayne, that would be wonderful, if you have any additional comments on that. But we have tried to explain it in the document, you know, as best we can. And I understand when they present at the funding and programming, we're going to have a, you know, more detail than what I'm going through with you guys tonight. Should I just finish real quick? You know, I only have like a couple more slides.
Okay,
You know,
go ahead. No,
the last
comments.
The last piece that, you know, we're going to have to look at is, and it kind of goes to the, you know, the key criteria. We were ranked when we got the original funding. I believe we were around 9th, you know, on the list of when we scored. I think we had 738 or 36 was our score. The top one was like 881, and the bottom one that got funded was right around 700. You know, so there's about 30 points that, you know, we could sway, you know, to, you know, if they would rescore it. Now, you know, and maybe Ann knows better than I. You know, these are the scores that we received in each of the different categories in the original submittal. You know, I'm not sure, and we're not required to. You know, obviously we're not, because we'll score it a little different than someone else will. We submit this, and then if they see a need, then they will have the original scorers, I believe, actually look at this and rescore it if they see a need to do that. I don't know if they do that on all of them, but that is a potential. So those were original scores from the original one. And again, the schedule that we're looking at, by next Friday, we want to submit it to MnDOT, get their review and concurrence on it. You know, we'll submit it through Scott Huey as our MnDOT rep that we've been working through at MnDOT Federal Aid. We'll submit it to Met Council to the TAC and funding and program on February 3rd, and then the actual meeting is on the 16th of February is where they will review it at that time. And again, the sunset date is the 31st. So if they would have one more meeting after this. If they would have to push it a meeting, you know, for more information or something, they would have one more meeting that they could actually bring it to if they had to. That was my last slide. So sorry. Okay.
Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
first. My comments are, first of all, that since we're asking for reduced funds, and I think we should be asking for substantially reduced funds, perhaps under $1 million, that would be part of what we could bring forth as part of our priority of asking for funds. Number two, the conditions have changed as to what Edina needs, and these 9 potential crossings here, these intersections, are significant to us now. And I think that this group, the ETC, should give our tentative approval. Since we do not approve the funding amounts, we really approve the concept of what we want to do. And I think the concept of what is wanted here for an alternative project is a valid project. And I'd like to see this group tonight pass a motion that we support what is presented to us, and this would make up for everything that was in our program previously. That's it.
Thank you. We'll consider that when we're done with our discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, Ann?
Yes, I had a question. Did you talk with anyone at Hennepin County? Because, you know, they had done that France Avenue study. They may be provide some good support on why the intersection improvements would be
Yes, we have talked to the county. Bob Byers at the county is who we've been dealing with at the county. So yes, they're in support of this. We didn't get a letter from them, but that may be, something that we should maybe look at, is getting a letter from Bob Byers at the county in support of this. And we'll contact him and see if we can get that.
Tom Johnson is on the funding program.
Tom's Bob, yeah, he's Bob's boss, so yeah.
I have a question about the map you showed.
Okay. Let me go back.
Page 15.
It's page 15 of our printed document.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that one. The understanding that the project that you're going for, the scope change, is not the total everything that might happen on France Avenue. But when you talked about the connections, there's no sidewalk for expanses along on the east. And I would think, there are benefits to this plan for transit use, and you need sidewalks for that. I'm just wondering what's the balance that you strike between not putting everything in there that will be funded with local dollars, but also not leaving something out, because if you leave out a sidewalk on the east side, people don't see the whole vision, and they might not see a need to fund the intersections. Do you know does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think part of the ultimate improvement in one of the things that we're trying to relay as part of this is we're going to be, the entire corridor eventually will be done. We're going to be doing, strategic pieces, so we're not going to, with the funding that is available, $1 million, unless the city wants to put additional funds in, over and above the million that they originally anticipated for this project. If they want to do that, we're kind of limited to what we can do, unfortunately. But as far as the connections and so forth, we're going to try to make and that's one of that 6,000 feet of sidewalk or path was primarily on the east side, to make that connection at least to where we would end up with from 70th Street down to, I believe, the ones I think we're looking at right now is probably 70th Street, Gallagher would be a good one, and then 76th, probably on the south. Those three would be probably the three for sure that we'd want to look at, and then connecting those three with sidewalk on the east side.
Speaking of Gallagher, would there be any benefit to referencing that Three Rivers Park District is going to improve that intersection so that one doesn't have to be on our dime? Is that my understanding, that Three Rivers Park District is taking care of Gallagher?
Yes, that's our understanding
Okay.
also.
So a different intersection might be a better sample one to show. And then the other thing, there is money in the CIP, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's more than $1 million, right, for this. So, it would be fabulous to maintain this enhancement money, but there also is, I think the point is that the whole project could be completed with the $1 million and what's programmed, I'm hoping. I don't want to speak too soon.
Sure, we can look at that. I don't have the CIP with me, but I know we had additional funds because we felt that $2 million went to got the bridge, I think, or built the bridge and all the connections to it from the promenade. So I think it was I want to say it was like $3 million or something like that we had, or somewhere in that ballpark. But yeah, we'll take a look at that and add that portion and calculate out how much more dollars that we need to do all 9, 10 intersections.
And I remember that the ETC, when we made our couple of recommendations on this in the fall, I think it was, we didn't specify all 9. certainly, I'm not opposed to all 9. But is there any concern about overreaching? And would it be better to scale it back and say we're strategically picking 4 or something?
Yes. The short answer, I think, is yes. I think, doing all 9 although it'd be wonderful to have that whole corridor, look, every intersection look alike and so forth. I think you can focus those pedestrians a little bit better, at, 4 or 5 intersections versus all 9, or 10, through the corridor. So I think that we can, at those other intersections, still have the landscaping, still have, I think there's things that we can do, maybe not the level of enhancements at those other intersections as we're talking about at these ones.
And I think my last comment is something that maybe Michael referenced, and that is that the bridge, we were under the understanding that the bridge would be a lot more expensive than people thought it would be a few years ago. And is there any benefit to making that clear? And one reason I bring that up is the TAB yesterday approved a extension for a project, and it was noted in there how much more expensive this project was going to be now. And so I'm not sure it benefits to say that the bridge would cost the same as the at-grade crossings, when I think in reality it's not true.
That's a good point. We didn't look at recalculating, the costs for that original improvement. The numbers I showed you were the ones right out of the original proposal. So that's a good point. I think that's something that we can look at very quickly is, what today's cost, because it was 2007 costs that we looked at before, what today's cost of that bridge would be, and, show how much that would increase. So that's a good point. I think that's a good
Rather
thing to
than
add.
today, it would be for when it was built, which might be 2 years from now, say.
Yeah, we'd look at the 2013. Yeah.
Okay, so where should the comments go? Who should we email?
Jack and or.
Okay. All right, so Paul.
Just one clarification question. You said 6,000 feet of sidewalk or trail. Is it lineal feet or square feet on that?
Lineal.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some connecting trails that we would have too, so it's not, from end to end, but, there's some connecting trails that we'd have in there too.
There's a 2009 access to transit study that looks a little bit at France Avenue and recommends at-grade crossings. And one of the main benefits of this kind of plan is that we provide better access to transit. So maybe that can be referenced. There are a whole host of things that changed in the past few years, and all of them seem to support this direction. And they're all at the local, the county, the state level too. So I just think that can be highlighted.
That's a good point. The transit connection, I think, is a good point too.
All right. Any more comments?
I just had a general question. There's currently not a median, so there would be, excuse me, a landscape median added?
In some locations there are median and some there's not. So we'd be adding a median. In some locations, some would be widening.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right. Very good. Thank you for your time and all your effort that you've put into this. All right. And everybody, please.
Cross your fingers.
Yeah. Read this carefully and email your comments. All right, next thing, 2012 priorities. So we talked about this last month. I refigured the document, and I think I had it in colored font, which was clearer on my computer screen than what you have printed out. But basically, the top 3 priorities are, as discussed last month, were living streets, France Avenue, Greater Southdale area pedestrian transit bike improvements, which we just talked about, and safe routes to school. So does that fit with people's memories? Okay. Are people comfortable with that? If we said that would be the basis of our work plan going forward next year, does that cover it? Okay. I'm seeing nods. Okay. And then we have the ongoing priorities, the capital improvement projects that come around, our transportation options working group, and reviewing traffic safety committee reports, part of our regular meeting. TLC, Bike Boulevard project, is just a carryover from last year. And then we have a carryover from 2010, which, I think, Jack, are we still meeting tomorrow morning? Okay, so we're going to, last year, this body gave over the responsibility of looking at transportation impact analysis for redevelopments to the Planning Commission, but we never had kind of a formal handoff. So tomorrow morning, we're meeting, Jack and I are meeting with Carrie Teague, City Planner, and Floyd Graybeal, the Chair of the Planning Commission, to just start that discussion and start the, I guess that's clear enough, and see where it goes. I mean, especially as we're developing policy that would impact developments, they need to be fully and completely, I think we need to work closely together. So that's the goal. So if people are comfortable with these priorities, we can go ahead and memorialize them with a vote. If not, we can add, delete, modify.
I'll move the priorities.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? No? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, that carries. The next item, is it our meeting schedule? Okay, so one idea is that we will sign off. I think the expectation is that we'll sign off on our meeting schedule, and then attendance will be based on that. And of course, it's possible that there will be a work session with the council. That counts as a required meeting. But that at least we're all on the same page about our meetings. A council member suggested that maybe we should meet the first Thursday of the month. So I gave everybody a copy of the alternative meeting schedule, but in 2012, there seemed to be a few more conflicts with that date. I still wanted to throw it out there for people. Does anybody have any thought about our meeting schedule? Nobody? Does everybody agree to be here 6 p.m. sharp, third Thursday of the month? You can still come.
Can I still make a comment about this that's
Yep.
not in my future?
Mm-hmm.
I think that the 6 o'clock starting time is difficult because of everyone's dinner, and a lot of people here work still. It's not as much for me because I'm retired, but the other thing is I think that we need to look at how this fits with recommendations going forward to the council. If the first Thursday works better, I think that I would go for that. Or if it fits better with Planning Commission.
Good question. Planning is what, second and fourth now? Second and fourth Wednesday? And council is first and third Tuesday?
Yes.
So first Thursday would still put us after first Tuesday. Could I just ask Wayne and Jack if you have any thoughts about, when something stops at ETC and then goes forward to the council, is it a problem? One thing about being later in the month is that often there's like maybe a 2-week break between when we meet and when the council meets again. Is that right? Oh, just a couple months, okay. From a staff perspective, how does changing the meeting to 7, because it sounds like we'll probably discuss that, or changing the meeting to the first Thursday impact people?
Thank you, Chair. From a staff perspective, the 7 p.m. start time would be no significant change from the 6 p.m. time frame. I think it'd certainly be best that the commission determines a time that's appropriate, that the group can actually, get here, get through traffic, maybe get home, have dinner, and then meet here, rendezvous back here. So 7 p.m. would not be an issue for staff perspective. Depending on the week of the month, the first Thursday or the third Thursday, there again, I think for the most part, from a staff perspective, should not be a problem either way. Currently, though, I know that there is some other usage of this room on the first Thursday of the month. and so that would have to be looked at. And
Oh,
we've,
who has it?
That's the, there's a subgroup of the Environment Commission that meets in here. And I've talked with Assistant City Manager and also Susan Howell that schedules the room, and there's some discussion that if it's a date that the Transportation Commission would like to look at in more detail, they would be willing to sit down and look at the meeting schedules for that body, the non-televised body, so they wouldn't necessarily need this room and or the community room, because we kind of flip back and forth between the two. So that's something we could look at as well. So it seems to really be, for better or for worse, that Mondays are the nights where there isn't as many activities going on from a staff level in either of these rooms. That does come with its own challenges, though, of as maybe it was discussed a few minutes ago, there tends to be more holidays, a little more conflicts with Mondays sometimes. So, excuse me, from a staff perspective, we're certainly here to work with the Transportation Commission on a night and a time that works best for this body.
Okay, what?
Getting that to us in time for us to review.
I don't know. Which, I'm sorry, I didn't.
I'll state it. Would staff be able to supply the envelope with the weekly agenda in time so that the ETC would be able to review it? Will that still work?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The one thing I'm thinking is that for the ETC people, we're going to have 3 new members, and they've all interviewed at this point, and all were told the 3rd Thursday of the month. And I don't know if there'd be any impact on the people who are selected, to have not been informed. Michael?
Yeah, I was going to mention that, and also all of us kind of expected the 3rd Thursday. I don't see that there's a problem right now. I like the 6 o'clock start time. I don't know, I just don't see a huge issue with what we have now, so I'm just curious what other people think.
Thank you. Catherine?
I'm okay with the 3rd Thursday, although I understand the desire to want to make sure that we're moving forward our recommendations in a timely way to the council for review or for consideration. The 6 p.m. start time is challenging for me just because I'm coming from across town, and so I tend to run into a lot of traffic at that time of day. But whatever we decide, I can make it work. I think one thing that we could consider is to evaluate maybe some potential other Thursdays of the month, change in start time, and sort of have that conversation this year and get that on the docket for next year. I know that's a long ways away, but it will be here before we know it. And at that point, then, if new members are being interviewed, then they can be ready for, it wouldn't be a change or a surprise to them.
Mm-hmm.
Just an idea.
That makes sense. Ellen?
For what it's worth, I would have been able to stay on. The 3rd Thursday was a conflict for me that I couldn't resolve, so that's part of why I needed to rotate off. So I could be a sub if you move the date.
Yeah, can we have subs? Any other? Nathan?
I guess I don't have a preference either way on the date or time, so I'm fairly flexible.
Same with me, I can make either work.
Same with me. Although March 15th, I will be gone this year.
Okay.
On the other hand, April 5th is my wedding anniversary, so if we went.
You could just
I'd make
bring
my
your husband here.
Yeah, I'd make him sit through this.
My only comment, I guess, would be is being that we've already interviewed 3 people, I think it would be probably not a good idea to change it at this point for this year.
Yeah. I mean, we always could review it once the new people are here. So I think tonight, not hearing an overwhelming desire to change anything, should we vote to hold it as is pending further discussion? And that the regular meeting schedule will be our schedule for 2012. Does that make sense? Oh, except the October 18th. October 18th conflicts with a school break.
Excuse me, yes, October 18th is one of the nights that we'd be televised in this room. And we took the liberty to take a look at a few other nights the same week or the following week that would work from a staff perspective to utilize this room. So the meeting could be pushed up to Monday, October 15th of the same week, or it'd have to be pushed to the following week, the October 22nd through the 25th. That's Monday through Thursday. All those nights are available. So I guess my suggestion would be you could suggest the fourth Thursday of the month, in this case, the 25th, as an alternative date for the meeting, knowing that the 15th is available, or any other days on that week of the 22nd as well.
Does that work for people? Do people prefer to avoid school breaks if possible?
Yes.
I know it affects some people. It doesn't affect other people. I think right now it affects 3 of us. Not that we go anywhere, but so the proposal is to move it to October 25th. Would that work for people? Do people have any standing conflicts on the 4th Thursday of the month? Oh, is it your birthday? It's just fine. What could I can't think of anything more fun than being here on your birthday.
The 15th is my birthday of November, so.
Oh, seriously? We'll have a combined party.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
My future replacement is unaware of the schedule, and he's just happy to be here.
Okay. So does anybody want to move the regular meeting schedule third Thursday of the month, 6 p.m., with the one exception of October 25th?
So moved.
Okay. Second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Thank you. Moving on to updates, our student member, we have one resignation. Our student member, Haley has, she goes to school actually not in Edina, and so it's too difficult to get here for meetings with sports and after-school stuff. So she has resigned. And Transportation Options Working Group.
Since I'm rotating off of the commission, I need to find out how I can chair this. So I kind of have held off over the holidays and held off having a next meeting until I figure out how we're going to organize the connection between the ETC and this transportation options. There is just as an update, there's another community group that has been meeting regularly, looking at some options for community transportation that we'll bring to our Edina group. That group had started before we formed our small group through the Transportation Commission, because that was a grassroots effort. And they've been looking at getting information about the independent transportation network, and they'll be creating a proposal about that, and then we can bring these two groups together and see what people think of it. So there's been continued movement on that side.
I don't have a copy of the draft bylaws that have been worked on, the model bylaws, which I think will probably come to us next month. Do you think? I mean, the council met and discussed them on Tuesday, and I didn't hear yet. I mean, I have an email, but I haven't read it yet.
I haven't heard the details of when they're going to roll out
Okay.
the bylaws and the
Well,
other
We're going to have them
additions.
soon, and I've read them, and so what we can have is you can be a co-chair
Okay.
with somebody from this group. And do we need to appoint that other person now? Or can we wait until next month? And so she can continue to operate?
I think from a staff perspective, I think that knowing that there's a transition that's happening with leaving the commission, also new bylaws kind of in the works, I think it would be inappropriate. I think it'd be fair to allow there to be a little bit of a grace period in here. Personally, I think we can confirm with that with Karen Kurt, the city manager, assistant city manager on this issue. But I think there needs to be a little bit of a grace period to kind of work out the details of how we do these transition plans.
Okay, thank you.
So that'd be my assumption.
Alan, do you want to stay on as co-chair and continue actually doing just what you have been doing?
Yes, that would be
Okay.
fine with me.
Great, good. Well, thank you very much.
I just won't be doing it on the third Thursday.
But you might come and fill us in, right?
Yes, I'll
Now and
beg
then?
to be earlier on the agenda.
We'll put you
That's
at the
my
front.
problem.
We'll-
Then I have to leave at 6. See?
Yeah. Okay, so thank you. BETF, we had two very special guests at BETF. One of them's in the audience. Katie, she'll come up here later, from Dewtown, and talking about the purpose of Dewtown and how they can work with the BETF. And so that's my report, because we'll hear more later. Grandview Small Area Study, which is happening now, and I think we're going to lose one person soon to go. 3 people are going?
Maybe.
No, I mean to Grandview.
I'll
Yeah.
be leaving early.
Yeah, yeah.
The update on the Grandview Small Area process, they're meeting, like you said, tonight at the Grange Hall, which is in the Grandview area, hoping to get the final steering committee approval tonight. There is a website. It is Edina citizenengagement.org, which I would encourage all citizens to go to and give their public comment or any questions they might have about that. It's a good place to create dialogue for this. Just going to go through a few more dates for you. Start of the public comment and the release of final draft of this plan will be available on the 25th of January. And on the 22nd of February, there is a planning commission public hearing for that evening. And then on April 17th is the planned presentation of this to the City Council. But again, there's a 45-day public hearing process which starts on the 25th. I would encourage you to all go to the Edina citizenengagement.org site and put your comments there.
Have there been any changes to the draft since we saw it? You know, we saw I read the transportation part of it. Has there been any change? It was like last month, I think.
There haven't been any significant transportation changes since last month when I presented those to you.
Okay. Good,
That's
thank
all I
you.
have. Thank you.
Living Streets Working Group.
Chair, there is no update since the last meeting. Paul, Bob, yourself, and I, we had met in December to really focus down on some big picture concepts that we wanted to move forward with once we move further along in the process. And I believe those are included in the packet for last month. So the intent is hopefully to get that group together within the next 3 weeks and just touch base and provide an update likely in February or March.
Well, you know, one thought occurred to me. You know, I was thinking about how the Planning Commission meets twice a month, and I would not recommend 2 formal meetings a month. But that maybe we could have a standing time to meet and really, you know, move forward on living streets. And it can be our working group and it can be other members. Well, no, actually, because we can't have a quorum. We can work it out. But anyway, so so great. The Living Streets Workshop then. Catherine, do you want to take that?
Sure. So we're really excited to let everyone know that the Living Streets Workshop, well, I think we had identified February 15th at our last meeting as the date for the daytime workshop, which will be a policy development workshop. We have generated quite a long list of potential participants and invitations. I think
Did they go out today?
I didn't see anything today, so perhaps tomorrow. But the goal is to get around 30 folks there. I hope maybe we might even have more than that, but I think we have almost 60 on our list now. So, and it's a range of potential interested stakeholders from different commissions with interests around transportation, the environment, health, planning, those that we need to be working with to develop this policy and that would have a stake in the policy. and also members of the public, engaged advocates, folks from organizations and in neighboring communities that the city also collaborates with, and elected officials, of course, and staff. So we're really excited about that. The morning will be focused more, will be kind of an introduction to living streets, and then also some discussion around how this may actually look given our networks and what our community looks like. And then the afternoon will really be spent digging into actually developing language, policy language. Our instructor is Ryan Snyder, and I think we're really lucky to have gotten him. He coordinated the recently published the LA County Living Streets Model Street Design Manual. So he has an incredibly relevant work experience and history in this, so we'll really benefit from that. And then the other instructor, Tom Von Schrader, is more of an expert in green streets philosophies. So I think it's a really nice pairing, and it should be a dynamite workshop. We are also planning, Ryan Snyder has agreed to come in the day before and will provide an evening presentation. I think the time is actually 7 to 8:30. And that's going to be at the Edina Community Center. That will be open to all boards and commissions, members of the public. It's an opportunity for any resident that wants to learn more about living streets and engage in a dialogue and conversation about what that might mean for the city and contribute to a vision for that. We really encourage them to attend. And Katie Meyer is here she's a member of the Dewtown staff, and I'm going to have Katie come up and just say a few words about the help they'll be providing for that public presentation.
Hi, Katie. Thank you, Commission, for letting me introduce myself. My name is Katie Meyer, and I'm a community organizer with Dewtown. And what my role is with Dewtown is to kind of meet with members of the community, whether it's citizens or task force or businesses or organizations or schools. And so I'm really connecting with people in Edina. And what we're hoping to do is kind of help create this dialogue. And more recently with Living Streets is to help promote and push people to come to the February 14th event and kind of expand upon that. Right now we hired 4 staff, and we're working in Bloomington, Edina, and Richfield with all 3 of those cities, and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota. And we're really excited, and I think the priorities that you guys highlighted is going to intertwine with what we're doing with Dewtown, and we can hopefully provide additional support for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think may go without saying, but if there are specific stakeholder groups that represent seniors' interests, the disabled community, schools, other youth-focused organizations, anyone that you think, business organizations, anyone that you think might have an interest in this policy or the policy presentation or the policy moving forward, Katie's available to go out and talk with folks and introduce them to the idea and help turn them out to the presentation. So if you have ideas, you can connect with her.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That sounds great. Correspondence and petitions. All right. Chair and member comments. Well, can I just start off with that because I know Tom has to leave. Tom, thank you so much for your time on the ETC and all your service and comments and listening and everything. We're
Thank you to all my predecessors and presidents and so on, heads of the committee, and to the staff of the city, and to the people that appointed me way back 4 years ago. So thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope I can help out with some committees perhaps in the future.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you. We'll miss you. So you'll have to come by. You know where we are.
Right.
And do you want to go next since you have to run? Do you have anything?
No.
Okay. All right.
This evening.
So then let's start over that way and then go. Okay. Oh, I want to say thank you to you, too. You're leaving too soon, but you'll be here and you'll be very involved, so thank you.
I had a one-year appointment, and just the schedule is a problem for this year.
I don't really have anything. I'm just wondering, will we get a new student member, or do they get assigned for the school year? That's really my only question.
I don't have an answer to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I've asked, but I don't know the answer. Do you guys know?
No, I don't know the answer, but typically, historically, it's been difficult to secure a student member going into March, April, and then you get into the summer months. Typically, their season tends to kind of fall with the school year, so they tend to do the appointments for the fall time frame. So I would anticipate a similar process here, but that should be looked at when the vacancy is for as long as it is. It would be interesting to see what the outcome will be.
Okay. Catherine?
Is this Commissioner comment?
Yeah.
Oh. I don't have anything.
Okay. All right, so staff comments.
Have a number of items that are put on your DS tonight. At the last council meeting, which just happened on Tuesday evening, City Council actually approved a number of requests for funding. First one is for France Avenue and Tracy Avenue at Crosstown Ramps. There's right now there's application for a $500,000. Well, I guess it's the transportation. Just a second. Local road improvement program through the state legislature is approving $10 million and in $500,000 increments. So the city of Edina is applying for, or will be applying for shortly here, improvements of the Tracy and Crosstown intersection or interchange. And at this time, we don't know what that looks like. The application can be somewhat vague. It doesn't have to be full plans, it can be full design, just recognizing that we know that there's some deficiencies out there. Potentially we're studying those to see how severe the deficiencies may be, and then if we can apply these funds to improvements for that area. So we'll be applying for that coming up here very shortly. February 3rd is the application date. So we'll be moving forward. Once we have a better idea of, one, if we've been approved for this, and then two, what type of improvements we may want to do, we'll engage in a public process, excuse me, both with the Transportation Commission and with residents of the general surrounding area to really flesh out what may be done there. The funding is kind of prioritized here for projects that could be done in 2012, would have priority. 2013 and beyond would be projects that may not score quite as high. At this time, I don't know that we have a project that can be done in 2012, but we are also investigating that as well, and that'll be part of our final application. If you remember this part of Tracy Avenue, we talked about a few meetings back, from Benton Avenue south down to just about where the fire station is slated for reconstruction in 2015. So this project that we're applying for, the funding that we're applying for here, may be able to be used in conjunction with that 2015 project, or maybe done in a little bit sooner as an interim project or project that would lead into the street improvements to the north. So these are all things that we'll be looking at in more detail once and if this application is approved. Excuse me. One of the second items that is on there is a funding application through Hennepin County, and they're actually looking to make some improvements at the France Avenue Crosstown interchange using the same application, same funding application. They've met with us initially and have brought up a few ideas of how to make some improvements to the France Avenue interchange there. There's a number of issues with the northbound to westbound movements that happen. So northbound France Avenue making left turns onto westbound, and the corresponding southbound France Avenue to eastbound on-ramp. And that's really the second one. The southbound to eastbound is where the problem occurs. There's a lot of accidents that happen at that location, and they really happen because of the northbound left turn movement stacks back so far, down to 65th and sometimes even beyond. So they're in the early stages of analyzing some revisions, alignment revisions there to the bridge or lane reconfigurations. And at this point, we don't know if those are going to be a solution that would have a long-term impact or not. And what I mean by that is typically we look out to 2030 and beyond to see if some of these improvements would suffice for a 20-year measure. And they're going through that final analysis right now, and once they have that, They'll be reporting back to us and also applying for those funds at the same time. So we're hopeful that this could be an interim measure, and we've talked in the past about that France interchange of being a problematic area in our community. It's noted in our comp plan, and we anticipate that, and the county's anticipating as well, that if they don't receive these funds, they would still want to do some type of project in that location. They believe they might have some funding sources or internal funding that would be able to accomplish the same goal without using these local road improvement funds if they're not awarded to them. So I guess it's looking pretty promising at this point that there'll be some type of improvement there, potentially yet this year, that would hopefully alleviate some of the capacity concerns as well as more importantly, the accidents that develop at that location.
Well, yeah, I was just wondering, Jack, will the France Avenue and the Tracy Avenue projects, are they going to be competing for the same funds?
Well, they certainly will, in the fact that, when they're reviewed, they will be looked at in that form. However, there's some information I think Director Hu would like to share on that.
Actually, Chuck Rickard and I met with some of the MnDOT, the corridor staff, John Griffith and April Crockett, that are responsible for this southwest area. And one of the questions we had this morning was, who else are we competing in the southwest part? And they were the first people that they have heard from or requesting a support letter. The difficult part of this application is that it cannot be used on trunk highways. So there's a fuzzy part of this, since we are within the trunk highway corridor or right-of-way, that they might look at this that would be within the trunk highway corridor. I make the argument that both agencies are responsible for the roadways that go over that corridor, meaning that on Tracy Avenue, the city is responsible for the roadways up to the abutments of the bridge on both of the pavement. That's what happened, if you recall, on the Gleason mill and overlay that we did last year. We found out real quickly when I raised it up through MnDOT that the city and the county had been claiming needs on those to get state aid funds for those roadways, so you folks should be improving those. So I brought that up today. I said, well, we're claiming needs from municipal state aid and a county state aid on France and us on Tracy, so we should, by making these applications, we should qualify for these sets of funds. So, and the other thing that they didn't know is they're the ones that are not applying the funding that comes out of a different department over there, and they didn't know how much of the $10 million is staying within the metro area and how much is going out state, because that's for the whole state of Minnesota. So there's a lot of things that they didn't know about, those two individuals, but given that they haven't heard from anybody in the southwest part, that's good news to me, because typically when they look at a lot of these projects, they try to distribute them fairly equally around. So if no one else is out there, no one else watches this broadcast tonight and gets application in, I think we'll be successful on either one, I hope. So.
Was there anything more on the?
And there's one more,
Okay.
the Bike Boulevard, the TLC Bike Boulevard improvements. There's in your packet as well as some information that the City of Edina has engaged services of Alliant Engineering to start the initial feasibility and engineering documents and final documents for this project. At this point, we've asked the consultant to come back with a schedule for us that we can then let both the Transportation Commission, Council, and obviously the public know about. This firm of Alliant has done a number of projects with the TLC, a number of projects in Minneapolis with TLC and federal funding, and we're very confident that they'll have a good handle on moving forward with this project. They did note to us that there's some things that we'll want to be mindful of in the timing of the federal exceptions or design exceptions, as well as a federal process that we may need to go through for a study of some of these more unique measures that the TLC is asking us to look at, like the advisory bike lanes. So we'll have a better schedule. We just met with them. Like I said, the council approved the agreement on Tuesday night. We met with them on Wednesday, and we're anticipating getting a schedule back from them early next week to start moving forward. So stay tuned on that one as well. We'll have more information to follow.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
No.
No? Done? Okay. All right, anything else from anybody? In that case, we are adjourned.